It's a common sense recap of the big stories. It's Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
So let's go to the former senior advisor for George W. Bush, Karl Rove. Karl, don't you agree, as we're just talking, the big issues are obviously immigration, the border, and also cost, food, and gas. Your thoughts?
I'd add to that the overall state of the economy, which the voters continually say is number one. And you've got them 1, 2, and 3 down there, distant 4, 5, and 6, depending on in what order, depending on what pollster asks them, is abortion, health care, and democracy. But yeah, number 1, 2, and 3 are economy, inflation, and border, and everything else pales by significance.
Where do you think this race is going, Karl Rove? It's been fascinating. You know the polls, your famous whiteboard, my friend. And you look at some of the latest numbers. I've also been looking at Nate Silver, all the different ones. It seems like the trajectory seems to be obviously heading to Trump, and especially in those 7 key swing states. Your thoughts on sort of where the race is at with your great expertise?
Yeah, well, look, I keep track of Real Clear Politics, 538, and Silver Bulletin. And every morning I get up, and now I have to do it again a second time in the afternoon because Nate Silver doesn't update his number until midday. But I go in and I mark down who has, who's winning and by what number, and is their movement up or down. And what it gets me is how remarkably stable it is and how close it is. Like yesterday, I think there were 4 instances. Remember, what we're talking about here is 7 states times 3 averages, so you got 21 numbers. Each one of those numbers represents the aggregate average of between 8 to 10, 12 polls, maybe with some formulaic overlays by, the author of the, 538 or Nate Silver. Real Clear Politics just averages them all together. The others may say, we're going to adjust for how many are in the sample and how good the pollster tends to be. What is his bias, Republican or Democrat? But we are talking about 21 numbers, each of which represents 8 to 12 polls. And so the sample size may be something like 8,000 to 13,000. So it's big numbers. And what gets me is yesterday there were 3 instances in which somebody had a lead, in this case Trump, by 2% or more. One average in Georgia and 2 in Arizona. There were like 4 where the lead was between 1 and 1.9%, and it tended to be like 1%, 1.2, 1.4, 1.5, that kind of thing. The rest of them, the vast majority of the 21, were less than a point. So, look, I think it's a coin toss, and I think how each one of them handles themselves in the final days here as we come to the close and the quality of each side's ground game are going to determine the outcome of the election.
I agree with you. I think it's tight, but I do think there's a lot of people who will tell the pollsters that they're going to vote. They're not which way they're going to vote, but they don't want to tell people they're going to vote for Trump.
Yeah, well, there are about 5% in all these polls on average that say I'm undecided. And you may be right. In 2016, it was socially unacceptable to say you're for Donald Trump. I don't think that's the case any longer.
It's worse.
No, I think it's better. I mean, people wear red hats and Trump shirts and fly Trump flags. And I mean, there's no longer – I'm not meeting any shy Trump voters, as I travel. But I do think there's a thing, we call it in polling business non-responsive bias, where people don't answer. The pollsters are trying to deal with any potential of a shy Trump voter by asking people in the survey, who did you vote for 4 years ago? And then they adjust the sample so it's weighted so it actually reflects the percentage of the sample that Donald Trump got in that particular state. Now, the question there is somebody who says I voted for Donald Trump the same as somebody who actually voted for Donald Trump? And among the nerdnicks in the polling business, there's a robust discussion about where that comes out. But they are trying to do a better job. Remember, in 2016 and 2020, they underestimated Trump's vote. And in 2022, the pollsters overestimated the so-called, giant red wave. So the way that they're trying to deal with it is by asking for a recalled vote.
But,
Ed Cox?
Karl, someone you know well, Ken Kachigan, he had a piece where he said, look, Harris doesn't have the stature of any of your previous Democratic candidates, going back to FDR, LBJ, JFK, even the losers like Humphrey or Stevenson. she hasn't gone through the fire of a tough race where she's looking for votes, and she doesn't have a closing argument except that he's a fascist. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, first of all, I thought it was a great piece by Ken, and I think he's put his finger on it. I wrote in my column yesterday, there are three groups of people who are up for grabs. There are the low information voters who really don't pay much attention to politics until right at the end. I loved it. I think it was in the Washington Post. They were interviewing people in Pennsylvania, and the woman said, well, I'm going to make up my mind when I'm driving to the polls. And there are people like that in our country. So that's part of it. The second group are people who say, you know what, I like what Donald Trump did in office, but I don't like the man. And they're up for grabs because they're trying to figure out, looking at both candidates and the closing messages, should they overcome their disdain for his personality and vote for him because things they admit were better when he was president. The third group are people who are looking at her. They'll say, I'll never vote for Trump. But they're looking at her and saying, does she have what it takes to be president? Now, they will probably not vote for him, but the question is, will they vote at all for her? And that's why, it's so important at the end. Those people are, if you're telling the pollster, I'm registered to vote and I'm likely to vote, and you're undecided, you got to fall into one of those three groups. And each one of them requires a different message than the two candidates have been offering up till now. You're not going to get, if you're Donald Trump, get those people to vote for you by giving the same speech you were given 4 months ago at a rally in Georgia. And if you're her, you're not going to get those people if you give the answers like you gave on The View. Her biggest problem is that View interview gave us an insight into her when she said, I can't think of anything that I would have disagreed with.
That's a problem for her.
Yeah, it's a big problem.
My belief, and I've said it many, many times before, that if you vote for Trump, you're going to have lower gas prices. Go back to $2 a gallon. If you vote for Harris, you might have $4 or $5 a gallon, but it's not going to be $2. And the price of food goes the same way as the price of diesel fuel and gasoline. It's going to, if you vote for her, it's going to stay up. I don't understand why the Suez Canal and the Red Sea is still closed, and they're not going to open it, and the Democratic Party's not going to open it. Why? I don't know why. They don't want to. They don't want to challenge. I mean, it's supposed to be international. It's supposed to be oil will go down $10 a barrel if they opened up the Suez Canal.
Yeah, maybe so. But I'll tell you this: we've got you on the spot here, so I get to ask you questions.
Oh, go please.
Yeah, go ahead,
Carl.
All right, go ahead, Carl, real quick.
One of the things that is absolutely ludicrous to me is her economic plan to fight inflation starts with not cutting government spending and putting our fiscal house in order, but by going after one of the industries in America that I think is one of the low-margin businesses, your business, groceries. I mean, am I wrong?
She can check my certified statement anytime. All the inner city stores, all the ones in San Francisco, the ones in Los Angeles, the ones in Chicago, Atlanta, the inner city stores are losing money. The drug stores are losing money. The food stores are losing money. And guess what? You're not going to have any inner city stores if it keeps going like this.
Yeah, and she's and I guess it polls well, but I'm going to stop price gouging. That We've seen the record of countries in the world that have said, yeah, we're going to have the government in charge of setting prices.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Karl Rove,
Carl, we love you.
Thank you, Carl, so much.
All the best.